Good afternoon and welcome to Gold and Black Live. Stacey Clarity along with myself, Kyle Charters, for the big show this afternoon. We'll talk a little football, some basketball, and baseball as well, as Doug Schreiber, the head baseball coach, will join us in the second segment coming up in about 20 minutes. So let's see, how does this show work? First of all, we need to thank our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn. When tomorrow is a big day, stay at HGI tonight. Also, State Farm agent Trent Johnson. You can reach him at trentismyagent.com or by calling him at 765-743-9595. And Follett's Purdue Pride, a Purdue game day tradition since 1945. All right, so how the show works, if you want to submit questions to us, you can. You can also just chat down below your picture there if you're following along. And we'll try and answer your questions throughout the show as well. So, Stacey, football. The obvious thing we're all paying attention to this afternoon is the assistant football coaches, whether they will be announced today or perhaps tomorrow. We would think it would be somewhat soon because of some deadlines that are coming up. Right. The big deadline is that you talked to Darrell Hazel, I guess in Mobile, about what time he wanted to have the staff in place and a big date coming up tomorrow. Yeah, he said that he would hope to have everybody together by their first staff meeting, which is the 12th, which is tomorrow. And when I said, do you feel good about that? And he said yes. So we expected to have the staff announced today. Obviously, there's still time. It's, well, by the time you guys watch this, I suppose, if you're not watching it live. It depends on when you're watching. But we know that there are people here. So namely, a lot of all the Kent State transfers, so to speak, that we know about. Linebackers coach Marcus Freeman, probably secondary coach John Haycock, and running backs coach Jafar Williams. We know they're here. We would assume as well, I haven't actually seen or heard from Kevin Sherman, but the new receivers coach, we also believe he is here as well. So it's not, I don't think there's a lot to worry about if you're a fan. I mean, the staff is being assembled. We know there's a good group of it together now, and they're here and they're starting to work, and they'll just be able to meet kind of formally together as a unit tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know if Purdue's trying to sort of wait till everyone is in place until they announce this or what. There are two ways to look at it. You could announce them one at a time or announce an incomplete staff, or you could wait and announce it all together. I'm purely speculating on what the holdup is for the announcement. Perhaps they're trying to get it all solidified. And what I think is interesting is that there's been very little chatter or rumor or reports or anything about offensive coordinator, I think, which is a little bit interesting. Obviously, a huge piece of the puzzle here is who's going to be the offensive coordinator. And, the defensive staff, I think, is largely in place, except for maybe, definitely one that we know of. And I didn't mention Greg Hudson, obation. He's a new defensive coordinator. So I would assume he's here as well. But, I think that's probably, I hate to speculate too much, but, perhaps what is happening is, they want to get everybody in place. Now, as you mentioned, just because there's no announcement yet doesn't mean these guys, at least a handful of them, aren't at work. Right. We know that, Hudson, Freeman, Haycock, Williams, and Sherman are employees of Purdue at this moment. Right. So regardless of whether they've been announced or not, they're working, it would seem. Yeah, and like I said, they're supposed to meet tomorrow, so we would assume at least that group of guys are here. In terms of the offensive coordinator, it is really interesting because, we have some people on the staff who are really good about finding out that information and getting it out there for you guys, and we just haven't heard anything. And I even kind of threw it out there. I'm like, okay, having been, I was in Mobile for Kent State's bowl game and was there kind of the days leading up to that, and noticing that Darrell Hazel is really involved in the offense there. Obviously, he was a very good receivers coach at Ohio State before he took over the head coaching job at Kent State, and he watched the number one offense, like the entire practice that I saw, and then during the actual game, he had what I would assume is the play sheet laminated, and had the headset on. You could see him talking, and he was always in the huddle with the offense. So I'm like, is Darrell Hazel the offensive coordinator? And I don't think that's right, but it's just really interesting to not know who it is and then thinking, well, shoot, the head coach can do it. No big deal. Just come and be a Big Ten head coach, and you might as well take the play calling duties too. That's not hard at all. Well, you went to Mobile obviously and watched the game, and just what were your impressions, I guess, of being down there? You had a chance, I know, to talk to Marcus Freeman, who's going to come as the linebackers coach. from what we understand. And
Right. He's here.
just what are your impressions overall?
I wish I could have seen more practice. Just the way it kind of worked out, I was only able to go and watch one practice, and I kind of was watching Hazel mostly out of that. And like I said, he just seemed really involved. He doesn't say very much, and I noticed that during the game too, kind of watching him on the sidelines. He's not particularly animated, but I think he's firm. I think the guys definitely respect him. I thought the practice was pretty crisp. In terms of what you can actually glean from the play, the style of play on offense and defense, I'm not entirely sure, because when you look at the personnel that Kent State had, especially on offense, you have a really good fullback and a really dynamic kind of running back / slot receiver kind of guy, and they both rushed for over 1,200 yards. I don't think Purdue, at least for 2013, has that kind of makeup on their roster right now, so I'm not entirely sure you can expect to get that out of this kind of group. But they did run a lot of different formations. They spread guys out, and they had some H-back, and they had some I formation lining up under the center kind of thing. So they were multiple, which is what Purdue has been. So I think that's kind of good to see that he can kind of do different things. And defensively, the team they were playing just throws the ball. So they were in nickel pretty much the whole game.
I don't know if we want to start getting into this yet, but you talked about Purdue's makeup. What is Purdue's,
I know.
Purdue's makeup?
Yeah.
We're doing these position by position things. We're only through the first three, I guess.
Yeah.
Have several more to go next week. But in doing that, you sort of get a chance to examine where Purdue is on a position by position basis,
Right.
and they got a lot of questions, don't they, for 2013?
Yeah, I think especially on offense, and I've happened to do the quarterbacks and the receivers right here in this first week, and quarterback is the position, obviously, and we don't know who it's going to be. I mean, you look at Rob Henry, and he has the most experience, but he really hasn't played that many snaps in a game from that position in, 2 years? Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, Turbush and Marv started the last 26 games combined. So, and obviously Rob was hurt, Henry was hurt, and but he would seem to be the guy, but then there's always going to be that question, even though he and I talked this year about that there is that perception that he's a runner, not a thrower. And he said, hey, I'm a better passer than I've been, and that could very well be the case, but what kind of offense are they going to run? I mean, if they want to run kind of the quarterback run game, then maybe he is that guy, but maybe Hazel comes in and wants to start from scratch and just say, okay, Austin Appleby, it's your show. Or Danny Etling, who's coming in, kind of in the middle of the year. So that position, out of all the positions, is the biggest question mark, and it's the one you don't want to have a question mark. And then you just look at the offense as a whole, and it's really like, okay, what are they going to be? And you could say the same thing on defense, too.
I know we've got one big recommendation for a position switch for Darrell Hazel.
Yes, we do. You can unveil that.
This is my one thing I want to tell him to help him out a little. Joking, of course, because I'm sure he doesn't care about any of my input, but it's our opinion,
yes.
Yours too,
I agree, yes.
that Raheem Mostert should be a running back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he needs to be a running back.
And he could be the best running back right away.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I say that because not as much because I don't think he's a receiver, but I think he can be a very good running back, and it's a position of need. But anyway, about Rob Henry, I think he's a quarterback. I know a lot of people on our message board want to move him to safety and have him gain 30 pounds to be a linebacker
right.
or perhaps be a wide receiver. I think, he's a fourth-year junior now. To move him at this point, when he's going to go into the spring, I don't see any way he doesn't go into the spring as a quarterback and probably your starting quarterback.
I agree. Right.
So how would you, at what point then do you move him suddenly to safety and then expect him to not only play safety but be really good at it? I mean, I just
right.
don't. Does that happen in the second week of spring? Does it happen at
right.
the end of spring
well,
when you realize somebody else is better? I mean, I just
right.
I don't.
Especially when you're, like you said, he's so far along in his development to shift him and put him there and be better than what they have. I mean, I know a lot of people kind of knock, Feichter for him not being physical enough or whatever, but Taylor Richards is a pretty good player. They have a lot of young players who are defensive backs. That you would think would be better options at this point. I could understand more if they're saying, okay, maybe use Henry as more of a running back. I could understand that, but I don't understand a switch to defense necessarily.
I know we're getting a lot of questions here, some of them basketball related. We'll get to basketball in our third segment coming up at around 2:40 or so. We'll try and hit some of these football questions, and somebody does ask, when will Coach Hazel be introduced and speak at a basketball game? That's something you would think might happen. You don't know anything more about that, right?
I actually just asked that question. I was just over at men's basketball practice, and it will not be Sunday. I can tell you that.
Okay.
It will be coming up. It will happen, but they don't want to exactly announce that quite yet, but I know it will not be Sunday. And so the next potential chance after that would be next Saturday against West Virginia.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that's when it'll be.
I know
but-
there's been some questions too about whether we've inquired about getting with Hazel to talk to him now he's on campus.
Yes.
We certainly have done that. We went to the links to go down to Mobile to follow him, so we'd like to talk to him here, and we'll try and do that as soon as that's possible. But understandably, there are some other things going on, such as finalizing the staff and recruiting, which is pretty critical here over the next month. Purdue with, I don't know the exact
13?
number now,
Is that right?
13, and some of them are already on campus now, but
Yeah.
there are some distinct positions of need that as we go through these position by position bios, you sort of recognize.
Yeah.
We talked about the defensive line yesterday, and when you look at some of the underclassmen in that defensive line, it is pretty certain you need to restock there pretty quickly, and you lost a couple of recruits, and Randy Gregory, who's now at Nebraska, and Parker Cothran, who's verbally committed to play at Penn State. So, there are some spots out there that you really need to try and get some guys, and you don't have a whole lot of time to do it.
Right. That'll be interesting, and I'm not entirely sure what the answer is. You get what you can get this year, but that's going to obviously put you in a hole, but I don't really know what you can do about that. Do you want to bring in guys just to have bodies?
Yeah.
Like, in all seriousness, what do you do? I mean, do you just bring in guys that are maybe
I-
not a Purdue
yeah.
caliber kind of guy, but you have a body and you hope you can
Yeah.
develop him? I mean,
Yeah.
it is a really interesting situation to be in. Like you said, you did the defensive line story the other day. Offensive line, they have tons of young offensive linemen coming that were recruited last year, but zero.
Yeah.
I believe in 2013, right? They've just lost that offensive line.
Yeah.
So I think they have zero now for this recruiting class. That would, I think you want to get at least one guy out of every position. I don't know. That's just me.
Jim also asked any idea the areas that Purdue plans on recruiting, and I think Daryl Hazel made that pretty clear that he'd like to recruit around the Midwest. And as you look at some of these assistant coaches and where they have recruited, and Ohio has definitely been
Yeah.
a spot that has been important. And, I think from Hazel's point of view, what he has said is that you recruit around the Midwest, it generates some interest in your program, and Purdue definitely right now needs interest in its program. That goes without saying, I think. And, you can see why Danny Hope did what he did with going down to Florida because, as he said, you could saturate the area. There's more talent in a narrow area, if that's the right way to put it, and you can get some of those guys. But I think what Hazel wants to do is maybe be able to pick and choose a
Right.
little bit by going down to Florida or
Right.
Texas or whatever. And I think that's a little bit more what Joe Tiller did, although he focused a lot on Texas, but at times, really focused on the Midwest as well.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, one thing we do know that Hazel has said is that he really wants to hit the Midwest hard, and I don't know why he wouldn't, for all the reasons that you just said.
Yeah. A comment from Josh, just back to the Henry topic. He says that Rob Henry needs to be on offense, but not at quarterback. They tried to do that a little bit at wide receiver, and I thought it was interesting that when Patrick Higgins took over as the play caller and then eventual interim head coach, that the Rob Henry
Didn't happen.
moving him around thing
Yeah.
sort of disappeared. And, there were some things that Rob did well at wide receiver. He caught the ball fine, I thought, and obviously has some speed, but there were some weaknesses there, which if you're not
Right.
a wide receiver
Exactly.
and you're suddenly playing wide receiver in the Big Ten, it's pretty understandable if all of a sudden you can't block.
Right, and that was the thing we really noticed out of the Minnesota
Yeah.
game, especially, was he was maybe knew what was supposed to happen, but just couldn't execute and kind of carry out the assignment. But the most interesting thing to me about Rob Henry is he has been adamant from the day he got here that he is a quarterback.
Yeah.
So, but he's also kind of a team player kind of guy as well. So it'll just be really interesting to see what happens now, and this year and next year, and how he kind of handles that. He's not going to jump ship. He's a Purdue guy. He'll be here.
Yeah.
But and he'll play hard when he's out there. But it'll absolutely be disappointing for him if it's not at quarterback. Especially because it lines up this year where I'm sure he thought, this is my year.
Yeah.
Well, last year I guess he could have thought it was going to be his year
Yeah.
too. But, it seems like it would set up for him to get a chance finally.
We do appreciate the questions. Keep them coming. Again, we'll talk a little baseball here with Doug Schreiber, who is our live studio audience at the moment over there at about 2:20, so about 5 minutes, and then we'll hit basketball in the last 20 minutes. We have not had, Stacy, a live show since the bowl game. I don't know how much time we want to devote to this.
What do we got?
Maybe
5 minutes?
90 seconds
Yep.
or so. It was rough. Oklahoma State, I think, is pretty good,
Yeah.
for one thing. Purdue was not very good in that game. The thing, though, that I take from it is that it doesn't matter. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I know for Robert Marve and for KK Short and, you know, Shavers and Bolden and those guys who have meant a lot to the program and getting Purdue back to the postseason for the last couple of years, it meant a lot. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, with a new coach and moving on, I'm just not sure how much we're going to remember it in a month or so.
I agree. The thing that's disappointing about it is, and I get that the last 3 teams they played in the regular season were not as good as certainly Oklahoma State was, but they showed signs that they were better, and they weren't that they weren't even that team, you know. And it could have been, it could have been the month off, could have been a lot of things, but how encouraging it seemed to be going in the bowl practices, I expected a better effort, and it's so small, you know, when you don't get a 3rd and short and all of a sudden you allow a touchdown. And I think Oklahoma State's average field position was like at the 40 or something just ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
And when you continually put yourself in holes against a really good team, it's going to be tough to kind of come through. And then the turnovers crept up, and that hadn't been an issue at all in those last 3 games. So for me, it was just more disappointing for them not to play at least as well as they had been playing. Whether that would have been good enough to beat Oklahoma State or not, I don't know. But that had to have been discouraging, even if it doesn't matter in the grand scheme. For those guys coming back to train, to all of those kind of things going forward, it can still motivate you a little bit more, and maybe a loss motivates just as much. I guess I don't know. I guess I don't know that.
This is Golden Black Live. Again, thanks to our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn. When tomorrow is a big day, stay at HGI tonight. Also, State Farm agent Trent Johnson. You can reach Trent at trentismyagent.com or by calling him at 765-743-9595. And Follett's Purdue Pride, a Purdue game day tradition. Somebody needs to edit this reader for me. A Purdue game day tradition since 1945.
Just a couple.
Go ahead.
Just a couple things we're going to have coming up on the site. Obviously, you mentioned the position by position things that we're doing that'll extend through next week. We're also starting our exit interviews for football with the seniors. I'm actually speaking with Robert Marve today, and have Crosby Wright scheduled for next week. But Akeem Shavers, Josh Johnson, K'Wan Short. Down the list we go. So that's something to look for. We're going to be doing that hopefully every week leading up to the spring game, or at least spring practice. So we're going to, obviously with this coaching change, that's going to be important as well, and we'll be talking a lot about that and hopefully getting to know the assistant coaches a little bit better. But I think it's going to be interesting to talk to Robert today and get his feelings on what this season was. Did they underachieve? I mean, and what really were his thoughts about this quarterback system? I don't know if he'll tell me really, but he can't get in trouble anymore. So
he's been pretty honest.
He has been very honest. So I'm like, so we'll see kind of how it goes. But
a couple of questions. One from Scott. I like that the new coaches are younger and have come from winning programs. To comment, I guess, and also Danny Anthrop, wide receiver or running back next year, which I think that's a good question.
Yeah.
You look at Mostert and him sort of as those A back, and I as you said, Kent State used
Dre Archer.
Yeah, Archer is a similar type guy. So you could see, Darrell Hazel using both those guys similarly. I liked Anthrop at running back when we saw him at times. That was generally at the end of blowout type games when, neither team is quite playing all that intensely. So it might be a little bit different when you see him in the first and second quarter. But, it looked to me like he can compete at this level. I think he could fill in either one of those spots.
Well, yeah. Who else is going to play slot?
Well, if we're talking about starting to move people around, I'm moving O.J. Ross into the slot and then playing McCarthy and Bush at the other 2 wide receiver spots, if that's me. But again, I don't think he's going to ask me necessarily.
I mean, Anthrop will have would seem to have a great chance to prove himself and show what he can do. I mean, just based on sheer numbers of who's coming back.
Yeah. Also, let's see if I can get through this quickly. Just a question about Henry and who we think the quarterback should be. I think Hazel will absolutely have the best guy at every position and not worry about people's feelings by creating a true culture of competition and accountability. I think that, this is not necessarily to say that wasn't the case before, though, I think from our perspective, we questioned some of the quarterback decisions over time, and legitimately so, I think. But if I'm a coach coming into a new program, I'm playing the best guy because
Yeah.
it's my job and I'm paid a significant amount of money to win.
$2 million, man. You're high paid.
So I'm going to play the best guy
Yep.
regardless of feelings or whatever, whether it's a senior or a true freshman or a redshirt freshman, or I'll play two guys if I feel like that gives me the best chance to win. That's what I'm going to do. So, yeah, I mean, I think if I'm Darrell Hazel, I'm taking this spring to evaluate the guys out
Right.
there. Now, that said, I think Rob Henry will go into the spring as the starter, and he'll have to be supplanted. That's just my guess. We've got no info that says that, but he's started some games. I think he'll be given that opportunity.
Well, and what's interesting is I'm not sure we know who the best player is out of those quarterbacks.
Because we
Like
get
us,
to
I
watch
don't,
very little.
Right, and so I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I've seen Austin Appleby warm up.
Yeah.
And I saw him a little bit. We saw one practice in bowl prep down in Dallas, and he ran the scout team offense against the #1 defense. He did some good things, but he also threw a pick or two picks.
Yeah.
So it's just I don't even think we know. And it's not like Rob Henry would have an edge in playbook, because I'm guessing they're changing the entire playbook. So it's like they're all on the same level. And so, like you said, whoever's the best, regardless of year, should get that chance.
Just one quick one here before we go and get Doug Schreiber in here. Scott wants to know, can you comment on the redshirt offensive linemen that will play next year? And I know they're pretty high on at least a couple of those guys. I did the story late in the year on J.J. Prince and Jordan Roos, who were two of maybe the five guys who stood out a little bit more, perhaps, to Sean Clark and Danny Hope. And I even solicited K'Wan Short's opinion on who he thought might have the best opportunity. But Roos played at right guard on the scout team, and Prince played at right tackle, which I think was his natural position from high school. And, judging from what people have said, those two might have the biggest shot. And, we talked about offensive line all
They're
year
gonna need
long.
help.
I think that it's pretty evident that some of those young guys are going to get a chance to play.
Yes. They need a lot of help on the offensive
With that, we'll take a break. And when we come back, we'll turn our attention to baseball, which might have at least one question about football in there as well. But we'll bring Doug Schreiber in. You're watching Gold & Black Live.
Going to the Purdue game? Stay at Hilton Garden Inn, West Lafayette at the Wabash Landing. Your family will love the well-appointed guest rooms, the pool, whirlpool, fitness center, the breakfast buffet, and the amazing Hilton Garden Inn staff. Located just 4 blocks from Purdue University, Hilton Garden Inn has long been the choice for Purdue fans. Call today for a reservation and make Hilton Garden Inn your #1 choice.
Check out the Purdue collection now at Follett's. Boiler up with Nike Fantastic T-shirts, League and Champion fashion colors. Simply fabulous, simply Follett's. Purdue pride everywhere on game day. Nike sideline, worn by the team, by the players, and by you. And make every day game day with tailgate toss. Follett's, Purdue pride, a Purdue tradition, 17 game day locations.
Wouldn't it be great if we could all rest this easy? Well, when it comes to meeting your insurance needs, you can. State Farm agent Trent Johnson is there to get you the coverage you need and the discounts you deserve. Home, car, life, even financial services. It's just part of being there. Call or visit Trent today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Welcome back to Gold & Black Live. I'm Kyle Charters, along with Purdue's 15th year baseball coach, Doug Schreiber, coming off one of the best years in Purdue history. In fact, you probably have to go back, 102 years or whatever it was, way back when Purdue won its first Big Ten championship before doing it again last season with 45 victories, getting the championship. So first of all, nice to have you on. Congratulations on that. But I guess you're almost ready to move on now, right? Season starts here in a couple of weeks with practice before you travel south about 3 weeks after that.
Yeah, I mean, we start team practice on Friday, the January 25th, and then we'll get about 2.5 weeks of preparation, and then we open our season February 15th down in Florida again. So
yeah.
It's basically here.
Special thanks to our sponsors again that help us put this show on. Hilton Garden Inn, when tomorrow is a big day. Stay at HGI tonight. Also, State Farm agent Trent Johnson. You can reach him at trentismyagent.com or by calling 765-743-9595. And also, Follett's Purdue Pride, a Purdue game day tradition since 1945. Well, last year was quite a magical run, and you had to feel like going into the year that you had a good opportunity, but things really came together pretty well from you from a pitching staff point of view, even though you lost, Brad Schreiber, who was arguably your ace last year. From a, lineup point of view, you guys were pretty stacked, and you knew that going in. But you started off well, you played well, and you finished pretty well.
Yeah, it was one of those years. We went into the last two previous seasons in 2010 and 2011, going into the last weekend with a chance to win the Big Ten, and didn't get it done. So, returning for 2012, we had a lot of returners back, like you said. Although we were missing Brad Schreiber, who arguably would have been our Friday night #1 pitcher, and Kyle Wood, who was our top recruit, a left-handed pitcher and a two-way guy. Both guys that would touch 90 on the radar gun. So, we kind of started the season with what I didn't make any bones about it. I mean, 3 number 3 type pitchers in Hayes, Breedlove, and Gunnar started the season for us. So. Those guys did a tremendous job. I mean, our pitching staff really picked it up and gave us opportunity to win some of those low-scoring games that maybe we hadn't won in years past. And then Podkul kind of switched out with Gunnar. Gunnar, helped us out of the bullpen. But yeah, with Mascarello and Wickren, I mean, our pitching staff really did a great job on top of the offense that everybody kind of knew about.
There's a group that really got along really well too. I mean, I think you say that about a lot of teams, but this group in particular. They were close, they had fun, but they also, knew how to focus in when the time came.
Yeah, they knew how to compete, and, they did, they held each other accountable, which I think sometimes is difficult for, kids, the same age. And, so they did. They got along, but they enjoyed being around each other. They enjoyed competing, but they had a lot of confidence.
Yeah. So, the roster turnover was huge, obviously. A lot of those guys drafted, some graduated as well. Do you still have name tags on all the newcomers, or have you do you know enough to be able to ID them right away?
This is in light of that. This will be the first year that all of our coaching staff remains the same since I've been here. So that's been a positive. But yeah, we lost 18 players off of last year's team with graduation and then just the draft, and so we had a big incoming class. We're still figuring out the last few spots. I'll set my roster, the week of our first ball game in February, so there'll still be some time for some guys to show. But it's been fun. I mean, last year's team almost kind of coached themselves in some ways. This year we're back, working, real hard with some of the young guys, but there is talent there. So I mean, it's just a matter of getting them up to some, Division I speed. And understanding what the expectations are of the program and Division I baseball, and I think we'll be ready to go.
And you do have some veterans that'll help you lead the way: Stephen Talbot, Angelo Cianfrocco, Sean McHugh. Mm-hmm. There's somebody else in there I'm forgetting that might be a regular, but those 3 guys and a couple others that you're probably going to lean on for not only some leadership but some offense too, right?
Right. Well, I mean, and those will be the 3 main guys really coming back off of. Last year's team with any experience. We've got Craig and Oliver in the middle, but those guys didn't get a whole lot of playing time with Miller and Charles there. But with Schreiber and Raymer, Pat Gannon will be a senior. So we've got some guys in the pitching staff as well that'll be able to help.
We talked a little bit about Brad Schreiber earlier. He was great a couple of seasons ago before he started to break down at Penn State, having some arm fatigue, and later determined to be the old Tommy John, which crops up way too often, it seems like. But how has he looked coming back, and are you pretty confident that he'll be good to go. I mean, he's now how many months removed from a year and a half from surgery?
Yeah, it'll be about 18 months, which is where you really want him to be. But he's come back well. I mean, he threw in the fall. We kind of limited him in the fall just to make sure that we weren't pushing it too much. But he's come on. I mean, he's always been a little bit of a thrower just because he's been a hard velocity guy. But he's worked with Coach McIntyre, and we've been happy with his development and some of the pitches that he's come with. And I think he's going to wind up being a better pitcher, because of the surgery. And not just rely on his fastball, which has still been pretty good.
I mean, he's a pretty good pitcher. We've seen that a little bit a couple of years ago when he was basically your Sunday. Is that right? Did he pitch on Sunday a couple of years ago? But good enough even that last year he was drafted despite missing the whole previous year with the injury. So he has an opportunity to be a pretty good, pretty dominating Friday guy if he comes back the way we expect.
I mean, he's 6'4", all of 250. I mean, he's easily the strongest player that we probably have and have recruited. But like I said, I mean, he's a power pitcher, which I think now he's got he's got some pitchability. He's 6-1 in his career here at Purdue, and so we're looking for a good solid year from Brad, and kind of be that Friday guy to kind of lead us out there against other teams #1 and give us a chance to win.
Now, I read earlier this week that is Connor Podkol out for you for the season with a similar injury?
Yes.
The elbow?
Yeah, he came out of high school. He was a North-South All-Star selection for Indiana high school baseball, but he opted out of that just because his arm wasn't feeling good. Yeah. Came to us in the fall and went through a rehab program and really didn't start throwing for us until January, which is why we kind of worked him into the rotation a little bit later in the year. But it didn't feel right, and he went back in, and they determined that he could use the surgery, so he's going to do the same thing where he's going to sit out. If we would have had Podkol back, I mean, I would have put up our pitching staff, even though we lost Big Ten Pitcher of the Year and our closer, and a second team who probably could have been a first team All Big Ten reliever in Blake Mascarello. I'll put our pitching staff up against that, and but without Connor, we still have some depth, and we just got to probably try to figure out the end of the game for us.
Yeah. So you've been coached for 15 years. When did talk of a new stadium start? And here we are in 2013, and it's finally here.
I think, really, in 2001, we finished a half game out of first. Ohio State was 20-7. We finished 19-7, and so we were really close to hosting the Big Ten tournament, which would have been a nightmare. and that, trying to,
that press box was huge. Plenty of room.
You would have been on scaffolding somewhere. But so I think that was really the first kind of talks of really that we needed to do something. And so back in 01, we were hoping maybe to renovate Lambert, and then those plans shifted away because the COREC wanted to use the facility, that land for parking. So it was determined that we would go to a different site altogether. And so that's kind of where we're at. But it does take some planning and some time, and but we're glad where we're at now, and we would have liked to have opened it up with a regional. That would have been a nice segue to close Lambert with a championship and open the stadium up with a regional, but we just weren't quite there in the spring.
There's a huge amount of excitement around the program when you come off of a Big Ten championship and you open a nice ballpark like Alexander Field. How do you try to keep that momentum going when you have such a young roster coming back that the fans the new fans that you've gained that are going to be out at Alexander, that you keep them coming back?
Well, I think the core of the program is still the same. I mean, the expectation is that we're going to win and be competitive, for a Big Ten championship, and the younger players are going to, I think a lot of times too. I mean, they create a lot of excitement because this is their first time through, and we've got to keep an edge about ourselves and not just be satisfied that, hey, I mean, some of these guys were lucky and fortunate enough to win a Big Ten championship in their career. Let's go get another one. So, I think the product on the field will look very similar to what the product has been in the past. And, like I said, it's a great venue, and it's fun to have some of that, support and backing.
And what people don't know really is that Purdue has been the most consistent winner in the Big Ten for what now? If you go back 6 or 7 years,
well, 5 years for sure. We've got the best winning percentage and the most wins in the Big Ten conference over the last 5 seasons, and we're the only team in the Big Ten over the last 5 years that has gone to the Big Ten tournament each of those years. So, but I mean, we've done some good things. We've been close, and so last year was kind of nice to be able to kind of close that a little bit. But now we've got some guys that know what it's like to win a championship, and that's got to be shared with these young guys. And I don't think it's not going to be another 100 years before we win another one.
I know we got some questions to get to, and we'll get to those in just a moment. What things do you like about Alexander? I've been out there. It doesn't seem like you skimped on much, if anything. I mean, it ranks right up there. It feels like to me, and I've been to everywhere but Nebraska, I think, in the Big Ten. It ranks right up there, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as big as far as seating capacity as some of the other stadiums in the Big Ten. We don't have as many suites as a Penn State or Nebraska, who share their facilities with professional teams. But I'll put our field up against any of them. I mean, the playing surface is phenomenal. The dugouts are easily the biggest in the Big Ten.
Might be the biggest in all of baseball.
In all of baseball, yeah, they're quite the size in it. But the press box and the structure itself, I think, has an appeal when you come up on it. And then the seats. I think every seat in that stadium gives you a close down to the field type of feel. So. The locker room and the indoor hitting facility and pitching facility. So, I mean, there's a lot of positives that I think fans and players are going to thoroughly enjoy.
Billy has a question and a comment just about how much the new location affects things. He says he feels like some of the new facilities are just being built, far out there. Do you expect, you had a lot of student turnout, especially when the students were still here through May. It's going to be a little bit more of a challenge to get, the students to come out to Alexander.
Yeah, I think so. I think, we're going to make sure that, especially for freshmen and those that are living in the dorms, that we'll have some transportation for them going out there, especially on some of the Big Ten weekends. But, I mean, we're going to miss being right, on campus. But I think there's enough students that have cars that live out in the surrounding neighborhoods and apartment complexes that will actually be even a little bit closer to. Yeah. But with night games now and lights, I think that's going to be something else too, that students will have an opportunity to be able to come out on a little bit more than a 3 or 4 o'clock afternoon ball game.
And I know you've started another season ticket push here today or recently. Just where are you at season ticket wise? And I know you hope to get quite a few people out there on a pretty regular basis.
Well, we've got a little over 1,600 permanent seats out there. So, I mean, the stadium basically is going to hold about 2,000. And we're between 400 and 500 right now in season tickets. I personally would like to get closer to 800, going into the season. And then you've got, we've got quite a few, freshmen and students that purchase the VIP card that gives them, free admission to baseball games. So we'd like to tap into that group as much as possible too. But the idea is to fill that stadium every day for every game. We've got 23 home games, and just make it a great home field advantage and a home crowd advantage as well.
Just for comparison's sake, you're hoping for 800 season ticket holders. Last year, we think you had about 17.
Maybe. Yeah, that might have been including people sitting in the dugouts. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you had some pretty good games last year, pretty good turnout because you had great weather,
right,
which always around here helps. But to be able to get 800 to 1,000 on a regular basis out at Alexander, I mean that is a pretty nice thing to have from a program point of view and for the players too.
Yeah, no doubt. And there is some excitement obviously around the program with the championship and the new stadium, and we really want people to come out and see what Purdue baseball is all about, because I know it's been tough in previous seasons just with the time of games and whatnot. But this is something I think it'll be a little bit more of an event to come out now with the lights and the stadium itself.
A couple of recruiting questions that people have asked, and we can't get into specific players or anything like that, obviously, but you've recruited Chicago really well over the years, and Chicago has a lot of good baseball players. How receptive, or more receptive, or has it been the same since winning the Big Ten championship? Have you found the road a little bit easier, and how important is sort of Indiana and the Chicago area for your recruiting?
Yeah, we're definitely more of a regional type, recruiting program. So we're going to recruit the state of Indiana. Illinois has been very good to us, and the Chicago area has been good to us. There was a stretch, though, where we had Mitch Custer, Mitch Hilligoss, and Mitch Prummer from Central Illinois, and all three of those guys wound up being, I think, our team MVP. So we were grabbing, the Illinois version of my man Mitch, but Chicago's been very good, and Coach Duncan has, he's from Joliet, Illinois. He's got a lot of contacts from that area, and so he's definitely going to go back to where his roots are, and he's been very successful in, getting the interest, but then also, making sure that we secure some of those top quality players.
There are usually a handful of players in Indiana every year too, who are Division I or Big Ten type prospects too. I mean, obviously your dad built a huge program, and some players from that area have wound up at Purdue as well, and there's good baseball around here, and a lot of good baseball played in Indiana, and you usually can go out and find 3 or 4 guys, right?
Well, and you look at last year's team. I mean, Plawecki and Charles and Perkins and Spillner, all Indiana guys. Joe Hayes, an Indiana guy. So I mean, there was a large part. Ryan Bridges, from up in the region. So I mean, a lot of our program was, players from Indiana. So, right now I think, you kind of find sometimes players even from out of state, are really more intrigued with Purdue, maybe because there's not as many kids from their school going to Purdue. Within the state, it's not such a nuance that Purdue, but. We're getting interest from really all over, and it's definitely been helpful to have the stadium and coming off the championship and really, being pretty visual the last 5 years within the conference has helped as well.
Another question from Billy. I don't think we can quite answer this, but we can sort of talk about it a little bit. He wants to know how many games are going to be on the Big Ten Network. By the way, you can listen to all the games for free on the radio, just FYI. But I don't know if we can tell him exactly how many self-promotion, but Alexander is more TV ready for you,
yes,
which is nice, than certainly Lambert was. So
yes,
a greater opportunity for television to be out.
Yeah, and they have not come out with the baseball schedule yet. We're hoping that we actually consulted with the Big Ten Network when we were building the stadium of what they would want, and so I think they really appreciated that. We're begging to get an extra game or two out of them each spring, but we're also, I think, going to stream some games live, on the internet as well, and of course, I think our games will be either on the radio or internet live as well. So the broadcast will be there.
A couple more things before we let you go. You mentioned the coaching staff earlier. How critical is it to sort of build that continuity, because you have gone through a lot of assistants over the last decade, it feels like, and to be able to keep Jeff Duncan, who obviously has done very good things with the offense and outfielders, and Tristan McIntyre, I thought, who came in and filled in a pinch last year, I mean, it's hard to argue with the results on what, sort of was a limited, in some ways, staff from a depth point of view, be able to lead the league in ERA. But to keep those two guys in the fold going forward seems to be pretty important.
Yeah, I think anytime you can have that consistency. If you look around at some of the more successful programs in the Big Ten, Minnesota has had a pretty consistent coaching staff. Ohio State, with their run with Bob Todd, kind of had that consistent coaching staff, and so Morgan Burke and the administration really helped us out a lot in being able to keep Coach Duncan, who had some interest from some other programs. He is now our associate head coach as well, so he's had some added responsibilities, and Coach McIntyre did a great job. We actually led the country in fewest free bases per 9 innings last year, so counting walks, hit by pitch, errors, wild pitches, and pass balls. We were the #1 team in the country to allow the fewest. So, the continuity definitely helps with the players, but also from the recruits who've been recruited to come in, I think it helps that as well.
Yeah. You're always on the lookout for talent and opportunity, perhaps, for a football player to try out, and Cody Webster, the punter, going to give it a shot?
Yeah, he is, and he's just joined us, so I mean, we've had just a little bit of a look at him, but he's got some ability and skill. Now, being off from baseball for the last 2 to 3 years, focusing on football and punting, right now it's going to be a time crunch because like I said, that our roster will need to be set by middle of February, so he's got about a month to kind of knock that rust off and kind of show us what he can do. But he's he definitely is the right type of person, and he's got the skill and ability. It's just got to be a matter of time.
You had Travis Dorsch. You had Drew Brees out to hit in the batting cage once, and he looked pretty good.
Yeah, he actually took BP on the field, and he hit a home run. I remember he hit a home run prior to the Iowa game, and he was actually a left-handed hitting shortstop. And the Iowa coaches were asking us, who is that guy? And I said, well, that's Drew Brees, and they didn't believe me. But yeah, he would have. And he told me when I first got here that, hey, after his senior year, he was going to come join us for his senior spring. But
I think he made a good. I mean, no offense, but he probably made a good choice.
I think we dropped down on his list after some of the awards and the type of career he had. But it's been fun to watch him and follow him as well.
Yeah. All right, so some important dates. Your home opener is
March 19th.
March 19th.
And then we'll play UIC on that Tuesday, and Ohio State then that weekend will be kind of our opening week at Alexander Field. Our first game for the season is February 15th down in Florida. We'll open up against UConn, I think, for the third season in a row. So,
where's your ring? No,
it's
somewhere.
It's somewhere safe, somewhere nice, but
a little gaudy to be just wearing around every day.
It's one of those things that they said that pretty much everybody's ordering the same size ring. So whether you win a Super Bowl or a Big Ten baseball championship, they're about the same size. Probably not the same value, but the same size. So they tend to be a little gaudy.
All right, Doug Schreiber, thanks a lot for joining us this afternoon. I'm sure I'll see you around, pretty obviously.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and it's right around the corner, so get your winter jacket out.
There you go. At least it'll be more roomy there in the new press box there in Alexander. All right, we need to take a break. We'll bring Stacy back in. We'll talk a little bit about the basketball team, which has a game coming up in a couple of days against Penn State. You're watching Golden Black Live.
Going to the Purdue game? Stay at Hilton Garden Inn, West Lafayette at the Wabash Landing. Your family will love the well-appointed guest rooms, the pool, whirlpool, fitness center, the breakfast buffet, and the amazing Hilton Garden Inn staff. Located just 4 blocks from Purdue University, Hilton Garden Inn has long been the choice for Purdue fans. Call today for a reservation and make Hilton Garden Inn your #1 choice.
Check out the Purdue collection now at Follett's. Boiler up with Nike Fantastic T-shirts, League and Champion fashion colors. Simply fabulous, simply Follett's. Purdue pride everywhere on game day. Nike sideline, worn by the team, by the players, and by you. And make every day game day with tailgate toss. Follett's, Purdue pride, a Purdue tradition, 17 game day locations.
Good driver? We've got a discount for that and a lot more. See State Farm agent Trent Johnson to make sure you get all the discounts you deserve on your car insurance. Saving you money? It's just part of being there. Call or visit Trent today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Welcome back to Golden Black Live. We welcome back in Stacy Clarity. I'm Kyle Charters for the big show this afternoon. I think we're the A-team, actually. Don't tell Alan we said that, but he's down doing whatever. And Brian, I know, is watching some basketball tonight. Do you even know where he's going? I know he's
Indianapolis.
Going to Indianapolis. I think
That's all I
Smotherman
got.
is playing in the Marion County tournament.
Sounds
maybe?
good. Let's go with that.
Tonight,
That's what
perhaps?
we'll say.
He's the expert on that stuff. I know we've gotten some recruiting questions, but unfortunately, you're probably going to have to go to our message board to ask Brian, because if you got answers from us, we would just be like regurgitating stuff we've heard from him, and probably we're not paying full attention to him. No offense to Brian, but
You don't pay attention to anyone, that's why.
Me?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
I got to deal with this guy every day.
Let's talk a little bit of basketball. Purdue is 7-8 now, 1-2 in the Big Ten, but an opportunity here over the next week, I think, to maybe win a couple of games. And they've shown some improvement,
Yeah.
which is good. I know you wrote a story about Ronnie Johnson at the point guard earlier today, and I think that sort of like A.J. Hammond's made some improvement there over a couple of weeks. I think that in recent weeks here we've seen a little bit of improvement from Ronnie.
Absolutely, and he is a freshman, and there's still a long way to go, and you can see that too, which I think has some fans kind of discouraged a little bit. And there was no question he had a good overall game, I think, against Ohio State. But for me, what sticks out is that shot he took, when it's a 6-point game and you just kind of a wild drive to the basket. So there's no question that he has strides to make. Obviously, he's 15 games into his college career, and Matt Painter said today, I think potentially he could be the best point guard we've ever had in Purdue history, which is a pretty strong statement, but it obviously says a lot about this kid and what Matt likes about him. He's really become, I think we could see this especially during the Big Ten season, and I talked to Ronnie today, and we're going to have our freshman files video up hopefully later today with him, just about his defensive presence, and it's, takes some time sometimes. I mean, Lewis Jackson comes in here, 4 or 5 years ago or whatever, and was a kind of a pit bull guy from the get, and it's taken some time for Ronnie, and Matt said that he really likes how he's developed full court pressure defense, especially. I mean, you saw him pick the pocket of Aaron Kraft. When was that, Tuesday? Whatever. What day? Ohio State.
Is today Friday?
Yeah. The game's Sunday. Yeah. Now we're just joking. But so I think that he's shown strides, especially defensively. But then you get in the half court, and the ball screen defense hasn't been great for anyone, not just him. And big A.J. Hammonds, and then the helper kind of thing. The whole kind of rotation has been a little suspect, at least. But Ronnie is the guy, and he's going to get the chance, and that's the thing. And that's what Matt said today. It's difficult to get better when you don't play, and these guys are getting that chance.
Billy asks, should the mindset of this team now be to just get as good as possible and hope to be good enough by the end of the season to win the Big Ten tournament and thus make the NCAA tournament? I don't see them having enough overall Big Ten wins at this point. I think, that's a pretty good point. I think that what they're focusing on more than maybe being, in the Big Ten tournament in a position to win it all is just to continue to make improvements.
Right.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think at this point, if you just look at total wins, you're going to have to finish something like 11-7 or 12-6 maybe in the conference, which, considering the strength of the conference this year, might be a pretty impossible task. But what you have to do, I think, during the regular season is not end up in a position where you're in one of those impossible seeds in the Big Ten tournament, and that gives you, almost no possibility. I'm not sure on the men's side, has a team ever won 4 games in 4 days to win
Yeah, I don't know.
the Big Ten tournament?
I would be
It's come
surprised.
close to happening on the women's side, I know, but I'm not sure about in men's basketball or not. But, I think you just need to try and continue to make improvements and win the games that you should win, and I think that the next 2 qualify as games you should win against Penn State and at Nebraska.
And if since Big Ten play started, even since the break, and it seems like Matt Painter's teams use that break so well, the practices, the way he practices to really kind of focus on things that they really need to work on. In the last 5 games, they're averaging, I think, like 8.5 turnovers a game. That's a huge deal from where this team started the season, when you're like, can they win anything with the way they turn the ball over? So, that they've made huge strides in that area. And the next step, I think, and I talked to Tyrone Johnson about this today, is shot selection. And just being better decision makers. Obviously, decision making is passing the ball and turning it over, but it's also a bad shot can be just as harmful as a turnover. And we saw that in the Ohio State game. We've seen that kind of. It seems like game in and game out, there are a couple of guys specifically, without naming names, that just don't seem like they understand situations and.
Names.
No, you all know who I'm talking about. So I think that you want to see a maturation process in those guys, especially when you need it. And if that doesn't happen, Painter will not play them. You know what I mean? He just is going to start shortening that leash and shortening the bench.
A comment from Don, who just wants to talk about the atmosphere on Tuesday. I was not there. You were there. I was able to see it on TV. It looked good and sounded good on TV. But in person, it was. Considering the team at that point was 500 and not expected to win that game, I think what Purdue did with the T-shirts and sort of generating that enthusiasm really made for a pretty good environment.
Yeah, it was awesome. And even Matt Painter today said it was cool. It just seemed weird to him to say cool, but
yeah, he's not one that is necessarily into noticing. I don't know if that's noticing or
Right.
being into,
He's
into all those.
consumed by
Yeah,
basketball.
he's consumed
That's
by
it. You know, and his
what's going
team and
on
what
on
his
the
guys are
court.
doing and all that.
Yeah.
But so I thought that was kind of interesting that he's like, oh yeah, that was cool. But
Yeah.
that's the thing that this program should do. I mean, I know they've tried to do some of those things in football, and maybe as the fan base starts coming back, they can. But when you have a nationally televised game, you know, ESPN, you know, Tuesday night. That's when it was. It was Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Late Tuesday.
Yeah, and I know, really late Tuesday. Anyway, it was awesome, and it was loud, and it was full. I didn't see the final number for attendance, but it seemed full. I mean, people were packed to the rafters up top, and it was loud, and that's what's kind of, even when the team started struggling and, you know, they got down, the fans still tried to kind of bring them back into it, and that was one thing Matt said, is like, it was great, I wish we could have played better, and that's kind of the sentiment, I think, from the kids, too, you know, and Ronnie said today that that's awesome, and you try to feed off of it, and sometimes it can really help, and we'll see what the crowd is like on Sunday, a noon game on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who is more important to this team right now? Ask Billy, Ronnie, or A.J. Hammond.
that's a good question.
That's a good question. I don't think there's a wrong answer
No.
for that question. I mean, you know, Hammonds has played. The expectations, I think, were high, but not quite this high, right? To be averaging almost 11 and a little more than 6 rebounds per game. I think he's been pretty good. The foul trouble's been a little bit of a problem because
Right.
they are absolutely a different team when he is in foul trouble in the first half and not on the floor. That goes without saying. But Purdue's also a different team when, you know, Ronnie Johnson is not turning the ball over and is what I'd like to see him do a little bit better. And I'm probably stealing everything you're going to say here, but he just finish with
Right.
those little runners near the basket
Yeah.
a little bit better. Because if you hit, you know, some of those floaters are coming up a little bit short. Those are difficult shots, by the way. Not that I ever have made one at any level, but
You're too tall, you don't need to shoot floaters, right?
but you know, you hit 2 of those instead of miss 2 of those.
Right.
You know, the score, you know, like on Tuesday, is a little bit closer. So
Yeah.
you know, I think that's one area where you could improve a little bit.
And he was asked after the game, where's his jump shot? Because
Yeah.
he seems like he won't shoot from the perimeter at all, and obviously he's struggling even from the free throw line, which isn't technically a jump shot, but more than a drive to the basket. I think it's a good question, and you kind of answered it, I think, in saying that when A.J. Hammonds is not in the game, it really hurts Purdue.
Yeah.
And you can see that. You know, obviously the Michigan State game last week really hurt them and maybe changed momentum even for them when he picked up his foul trouble, and same thing against Ohio State, although Purdue was kind of already in a hole at that point against Ohio State. I'm not sure he could have made a difference in that game, maybe necessarily. But when you look at the defense, both of those guys can be a defensive presence as well, and obviously it's a key ingredient for Purdue. And I would like to see a little more toughness, I think, out of Ronnie, especially. It's interesting. He just seems so laid back, and he's like, "Oh, there's no pressure. I don't feel anything," you know, which is good. But you know, I want him to, you know, get excited about things. Maybe he just won't ever. Maybe that's not who he is. But you know, you're used to it with Kramer and Lewis
Yeah.
Jackson, and you know, kind of having that fiery kind of guy. And I don't know, maybe Tyrone can be that guy.
DB Cooper wants to know, will anyone on this team be a consistent jump shooter?
Well, I guess we'll find out. They need someone to
Yeah.
emerge that. I mean, there's no question somebody needs to become that.
You know what I think
We
is
don't
funny?
get-
Not to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
But people complain so much about Ryan Smith over the years. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, nobody not nobody, I'm exaggerating, but everybody's like, Smith, what's he in there for?
Yeah.
Well, he's in there to shoot the ball.
Yeah.
You know, I think
Yeah.
you'd like him in there shooting the ball now, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so
Nobody
just
knows what they have to
remember
work on.
this later when Purdue has a good shooter who
Yeah.
can stretch the defense and things that, they're valuable.
DJ Bird is trying to be that guy, but as we saw
Yeah.
against Ohio State, he must have been under instructions to take better shots and not crazy shots from really far away, because as soon as he shot that 3, he ran straight to the bench. So somebody has to become that. I think Bird can still be it. I would just like to see his shot selection be a little better.
Yeah.
You go ahead and shoot a 3 if you're open. Why do you got to shoot a 3 that's like 10 feet beyond the line? You know what I'm saying?
I do know
Then
what
you
you're
maybe
saying.
don't airball it, or you don't clank it off the front rim,
Yeah.
then it goes in.
Percentage probably goes up when you
Yes.
get a little closer. All right, so we got a couple more minutes here left. You know, Penn State on Sunday. When you're 7-8, I think it's weird to say a game is must win. But you do need to win these games that
Right.
you're going to be favored
sure.
in if you want to have any chance at, you know, being above 500 to get in the NIT, which I think would be big for a young team, or if you want to have a chance, and what it seems to me is a pretty small likelihood that you could, put yourself in position to have a good seed for the Big Ten tournament, and maybe give yourself a chance to make a run if you're playing well at that time. But I mean, you can't lose these type of games. And I think if you would lose, a game like this, or a road game at Nebraska is going to be, any road game I think is a little
Right.
bit difficult. But I think you lose some of the momentum that you've generated here recently.
I would agree. They absolutely have to win on Sunday. I think it was Ronnie today. It was either Ronnie or Tyrone today who was kind of like, Penn State's not that good. So, kind of saying one of those things they shouldn't say. I, of course, didn't get it on tape, but I kind of heard it in the background. And so the players feel the same way. We want to continue to build momentum. That's what this is about, And you need to win at home, and you need to win at home, especially against the teams that are below you in the standings, which Penn State is, and Nebraska on the road will be next week.
Yeah. All right, I think we're out of time. Are we back? Do we do this again next week? Do you know?
Yes.
We do?
Keep going.
Are you sure?
I am
all the way
absolutely
through,
positive.
All the way through the basketball season every Friday, 2
Yes.
o'clock, right here on your computer, or we record this and put it back on the interwebs later this evening. So I don't know why I'm telling you this now. If you're not watching now, you can watch it back later this evening. So Alan and Brian will be back next week, where we'll talk a little bit more football and perhaps have some more information. I'm sure by next week we'll have some more information to pass along about assistant coaches and maybe more football recruiting as well, and we'll talk some Boilermaker hoops too. Special thanks to our sponsors. I know I'm running out of time here. Hilton Garden Inn, when tomorrow is a big day. Stay at HGI tonight. Also, State Farm agent Trent Johnson. You can reach him at trentismyagent.com or call him at 765-743-9595. And follow it's Purdue Pride, a Purdue game day tradition since 1945. That'll do it from us. Special thanks to everybody who puts the show on. For Stacy, I'm Kyle. You've been watching Gold and Black Live.